Well, Miss Ruby asked me to sing. She know I want to sing, but she here, so I'm happy to sing. I'm just going to sing 2 songs. Is that all right? Okay, then I'm going to sit down. Amazing grace shall always be my song of praise, for it was grace that bought my liberty. I do not know just why he came to love me so. He looked beyond my faults and saw my need. Amazing grace shall always be my song of praise. For it was grace that bought my liberty. I do not know just why he came to love me so. He looked beyond my faults and saw my need. I shall forever live my life to Calvary, to view the cross where Jesus died for me. How marvelous the grace that caught my falling soul. He looked beyond my faults and saw my need. I'm gonna sing a little quartet music. I don't have no backup, so y'all have my backup. Is that okay? All right. It's an easy song. That's all right. Growing up as a child in my mother's care, my mama told me, she said, Mel, you'll always be there. Now I'm a grown woman, living on my own. But I can truly say that Jesus never left me alone. Well, sometimes I say, Lord, I'm dependent on you. Sometimes I gotta say, Lord, I'm dependent on you. Let me sing that verse one more time. Growing up as a child dependent on you. I'm dependent on you. Yeah, y'all know it. Y'all help me say, I'm dependent on you. Tell the Lord how you feel. Say, I'm dependent on you. Thank y'all.
Thank the youth for those poems. Thank the youth for coming forward. We bless God for the youth and for the sponsors. And we thank Deacon Miss Carolyn Brown for lighting the candle on also behalf of the church, because we too are very thankful for everything that has been done thus far. And now we're going to have Brother Christopher Pitts will come and introduce our speaker. Two fine young men, one introducing and one going to speak. Amen. All right. Thank God for our young men. And thank God for Brother Sean as well. All of them are good buddies.
Good evening to everyone. Good evening. Yes, it is true. We are all good buddies and great buddies. I always brag all the time to everyone about how I have been blessed to have the same friends since kindergarten. That's truly hard to say for some people. Some folks can't stay friends for 5 minutes. And I have had the same 3 great friends since I have been, before I could even walk. And so I thank God for that. And as I was sitting back there thinking about them, I was thinking to myself how great it is to serve a God who sees us for who we are right now and not for how we were. Because Lord knows we'd be in some trouble, Lord, if he held some things against us. Oh man, I can tell you, so thank God for that. But in order for us to grow, we have to be willing to accept change and to be able to embrace change. But I am here today to introduce and not to preach to you all. And education is what remains once we forget everything that we have learned in school. Truly, an education is not just there to set us up for having a career, but it prepares us to be able to think for ourselves and to make good choices for ourselves. An education is admirable, but at the same time, it's important to remember that most of the things that we need to know in life cannot be taught to us. I am tasked today with introducing you to a man and my best friend who embodies those characteristics of being responsible, of perseverance, of dedication, loyalty, of being supportive. And his name is Ronnie Sidney II. Now, I told myself I wasn't going to say his middle name, but I got to get you. Ronnie Sidney II. Amen. Ronnie is the son of Dr. and Reverend Sidney and Gwendolyn Sidney. He's also the brother of Miss Shalonda Ross. He has a very active and beautiful daughter, Miss Molly. Say hi, Molly. And Ronnie is also a very loving and supportive uncle, with his nieces who are here, Sydney and India. It was India. Is she here? No, India? Okay. And DeAndre as well. Ronnie earned his education. He has recently received his master's degree from Virginia Commonwealth University in social work, which means that Ronnie loves helping people and working with people. And that is truly a characteristic that he shows each and every day. And so it is a blessing to have him. And so I would now like you all to give him a big round of applause and welcome him to our speaker, Mr. Ronnie Sidney.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Ronnie Sidney. Before I get started, I would like to give a shout out to some special guests I have in the back. Do you all mind standing? This is my family. These are my kids before I had kids. They came all the way from Colonial Beach, Virginia, to support me today. About three years ago, I worked in Colonial Beach. I worked for three and a half years, and I worked with some of those young men in the back, 3 of those young men in the back, and they grown up and taller than me now. And that was probably one of the hardest jobs I had to leave. It was hard. You know, it was a very hard decision. I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to get more education. I wanted to be able to be a better asset to those kids and kids all around the country. So I had decided to go back to school. But those are my kids back there, always. And their mom, I'd definitely like to give her a shout out. She was one of the most supportive parents ever. I wish Natalie would come up here and kind of talk to you all about, because I actually used her as a mentor to other parents in the group. Because Natalie, she advocated for her kids. She was a true advocate, a real advocate. She taught me some things about advocating. You know, she would not let anybody push her kids to the side. Her kids were going to get the education they were supposed to get no matter what. That's one thing I will always respect about her. Today, I want to hold you guys for a little while and just talk a little about education. But I want to talk about it from a historical perspective and also a current perspective. I was blessed to have wonderful parents, wonderful father, wonderful mother, wonderful family, wonderful sister, girlfriend, kids, and also a wonderful church family. This is the place where I learned how to speak publicly, doing a little prayers or doing some introductions and just getting comfortable standing in front of people and giving back to people. And that's something I still maintain to this day. Has anyone ever heard of Barbara Johns? Nobody ever heard of Barbara Johns? When I was preparing this speech at 3:30 in the morning, I came across a quote. The title of today is going to be Reach for the Moon. There was a quote that I used to say back in the day was, reach for the moon, and even if you miss the moon, you'll land in the stars. So that's the theme I want to have today, just to reach for the moon. To reach for any goals you have, anything that you want to accomplish, to reach for it. I'm going to take it back. I'm going to take it back to Africa. How many of y'all know where Africa is? I'm taking it back, you know. I'm going back to Africa because I truly believe in history. And I don't believe that our history started here in America. Our history started thousands, hundreds of thousands of years before we came to America. But in Africa, we were the world's first architects, the world's first engineers, the world's first astronomers, philosophers, politicians, the first whatever. And when we came to America, things was very different for us. We weren't allowed to get an education in America for 250 years. And 250 years of not being educated does something to a people. We did have ancestors who tried to get an education, who tried to learn how to read and write at the fear of being whipped. Some at the fear of getting their fingers cut off. But still, they sought to read and write. Has anyone seen the movie 12 Years a Slave? Some of us had to hide the fact that we knew how to read and write because it was dangerous. Some of the first readers and writers were ministers. And they would actually learn how to read the Bible to contradict what the white minister was telling them, because the white minister was telling them that slavery was good. You know, be good and kind to your master, obey your master. But those who knew how to read knew the Bible didn't tell them exactly that quote. So they would find scriptures that contradicted that. And they would tell the people that, hey, you know, the Bible is also telling us to get free. So that's what they did. Also, I want to talk about the Brown versus Board of Education and the Plessy versus Ferguson ruling, because those are two, I can't even get into this speech without talking about those two rulings. The Plessy versus Ferguson ruling ensured that all citizens equal protection under the law. But the ruling also said that public facilities and education is separate but equal, which doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know how they passed laws back then that didn't make any sense now. But the facilities that we had back then weren't equal. How many of you all grew up in segregated schools? So we got some legends, some people in here that can probably tell you some stories about the condition of some of those schools back when they went. The reason why I brought up Barbara Johns because she has a very, very fascinating story that I think these kids in here can resonate with. She was from Prince Edward County, Virginia. And at 16 years old, she attended R.R. Morton High School in Farmville, Virginia. Her school was segregated. It was an all-black school. The school was designed to hold 180 students. But guess how many students actually attended her school when she was there? 450. And it sounds like some of the prisons and jails that I've been to in America too. And I got a representative here. Her school was so cold that during the winter the teachers and the kids wore jackets just to stay warm. The school did not have a gymnasium. The school did not have a cafeteria. And the teachers had to use the same restroom as the students. The teachers and students did not have desks or blackboards. And due to overcrowding, some of the students had to take classes in old, broken down school buses in the front of the school. When the parents and students requested funds from the all-white school board to address the school needs, the board gave them enough money to build plywood structures covered with tar paper and heated them with pot-belly stoves. What is a pot-belly stove? It's the big stove that Bugs Bunny used to like try to cook people in. Now, I haven't been in the school since 2011, but I know they had smart boards and little markers that you can write on the board and see them on the computer, and kids are getting laptops to take to school. So just take it back to a time where they didn't even have heating for their school. They didn't have desks. They didn't have cafeterias. They didn't have some of the things that right now I think sometimes we take for granted for having in this generation. But the kids at the time, they eloquently referred to those tar paper shacks as chicken shacks, and that became a symbol of what was wrong with a segregated education. Barbara Johns was so fed up with how her and her fellow students were being treated that she organized a student strike. Has anyone heard of the Vernon Johns story? We watched that when we were growing up in school. I don't know if they still show those movies, but Vernon Johns was actually her uncle. So her uncle was a minister and also a civil rights activist. So she kind of had a little bit of that passion, a little bit of that fire in her. So she said, what she did was she forged a teacher's note telling the students to come to the cafeteria at a certain time. And she had another student to get the principal from off the school grounds because, if the principal was there, she couldn't be able to host assembly to get the kids to walk out of school. So she had the assembly and she got over 400 kids to walk out of school to stand up for the conditions of their schools. Because remember, the doctrine was separate but equal. But does that school sound equal to a white school? Not at all. So her and her friends stood up to that. And what had happened was that things got so crazy in Farmville that she had to actually move back home to Alabama because her parents feared for her life. They had a guy named Reverend L. Francis Griffin. They called him the fighting preacher. Back then, the preachers used to fight. They used to fight. They used to fight for the rights of the people. Our preachers, and even today we still have preachers advocating, but they were our mouthpiece. They were the mouthpiece of the church, mouthpiece of the community, mouthpiece for the struggle. So our preacher organized the parents who also supported the strike, and also Oliver Hill and Spotswood Robinson. Kids, remember those names. Oliver Hill and Spotswood Robinson. Two dynamic figures. If you know anything about civil rights, you need to know about those figures because they are local figures. And they took her case all the way up to the Supreme Court. And if you go down to Richmond, down around the Capitol, they have monuments dedicated to Barbara Johns and the two lawyers and the preacher. This has been erected. It cost $2.5 million. So please, if you all are in Richmond, spend some time, just go out there and see the monuments. It's a true testament to how far we've come in this country. And also, just a little bit about the Brown versus Board of Education, which ended segregated schools and gave us the right to attend schools, not based on our race, but just based on where we live. Some people had to walk, it could have been a school right up the street, and they had to walk a mile just to get to school and pass to the white school, just to get, a mile to get to their school. So there's some things today, the system is not perfect, but there's some things that we can definitely be grateful for and thankful for to have. So I want to talk a little bit about education today. because Essex County has been making some news on the education forefront, and it's not positive news. Just a few weeks ago, I read in the paper that a federal judge threw out a lawsuit alleging discrimination against black and disabled students in a number of local Virginia schools, including Essex County schools, Henrico, Hanover. There's about 5 schools, and the lawsuit included 20 students. So today we're still having to advocate for our students. It's up to the parents, really. The kids, they sometimes they got their hands tied. It's up to the parents and the communities to be the advocates. And my dad shared with me that in Essex County, there was supposed to be a rule that the NAACP and the community had struck with the school board to have a black principal in one of the 3 schools. We fell asleep because there's no black principals in none of the Essex County public schools. So it's our job to be the mouthpieces, like I said, for our community and for our kids. I also want to talk about the educational deficits or this gap between white students and black students. Our kids are not dumb. They're not dumb. They're actually extremely smart. But there's some gaps that still exist in the school system that I want us as parents and as kids to try to fill. The one gap is a lack of rigorous curriculum serving needs of our students. Some kids are just not challenged. I'm going to call out Alonzo back there. Because Alonzo was like a 4.0 straight A student. I mean, this kid was sharp. He would get his work done so fast that he was helping other students in the class get their work done. Amen. And when you got a kid that's not being challenged, who's really intelligent, they're going to act up. They're not being challenged. They're not getting what they want from the educational system. And a lot of our kids are not being challenged by the curriculums. Also, I want to talk a little bit about this whole thing about zero tolerance policies. There's this thing called the school to prison pipeline. I just want to touch on it for a little bit. I'm sure some of you may be aware of it. But today, public education has become a gateway for youth to be placed in juvenile justice facilities due to zero tolerance discipline policies. Many students are being referred to the school's law enforcement officer instead of being seen by the principal. So in schools now you have resource officers. And the resource officers have replaced the social workers. So instead of the kids sitting down with the principal, talking about discipline and having the parents come in, sometimes kids are getting criminal charges and having to go to court behind something that occurred in school that really wasn't even a serious offense. African Americans receive a disproportionate amount of suspensions and expulsions each year. 40% of students expelled from U.S. schools each year are black. 70% of students involved in in-school arrests or referred to law enforcement are black and Latino. Black students are 3.5 times more referred to law enforcement officials. Black and Latino males make up 61% of the incarcerated population, despite being only 30% of the population. In Virginia, we actually make up 60% of the prison population. 68% of all males in state and federal prisons do not have a high school diploma. So I'm going to touch on that for a little bit. Because I work at a prison. And when the guys come in, when they first come to the building, I have to do an assessment on them. And some of the first questions I have to ask them is, do you have a high school diploma or GED? How many times have you been suspended from school? And what were your grades in school? So you got A, B, C, D, E, F. Because they calculate and they know and they can tell just by those few statistics whether or not you're going to come back to prison or come to prison at all. So education is very important. It's a risk factor if you don't have it. Also, for the little ones, anybody here in 3rd grade? How many 3rd graders? Right. 3rd grade test scores. Anybody out here that has any grandkids, grandsons, granddaughters? 3rd grade test scores are very important predictors on whether or not your kid will graduate, whether or not they'll drop out of school, or whether or not they'll be able to succeed and avoid some of the consequences that I've just talked about. So it's very important that we get our kids up to par before they get 3rd grade, because they really look at those 3rd grade test scores. Those are very important. Next, I want to talk a little bit about special education, because I was in special education when I was in school. Not something I'm proud of. I was actually very embarrassed, and I did not admit it until after I graduated school. That's how embarrassed I was about it. It was a very hard time. I did struggle in school academically, but I knew I was not learning disabled. And by getting my master's degree, I had to prove that to myself. Amen. It wasn't about proving to anybody else, but proving to myself that I could learn. But just to go a little bit through the process, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act came from out of the board versus the Brown versus Board of Education ruling. And the process for kids to get referred to special ed is first they get a referral from either a teacher or someone in the school. Then they're assessed. Then their eligibility is determined. And then they're placed in the program. But I want us to think about who's the ones doing the referring.
Yes, sir. We know.
Who's the ones doing the assessing? And who's the ones determining the eligibility? Most of these people, because 80% of the teachers and school administration are white, and the majority of them are female. And that's a part of integration. When we integrate the schools, we send our kids to other people and put our kids in other people's hands. So we have people that's assessing us, that's diagnosing us, that are not us. So some kids, not all of them, there are some good teachers out there, I've seen them, good educators, good psychologists, but they're also ones who have some bias. We all have biases. But when your biases can either have a kid in special education or have them in a regular classroom, because when you're in special ed, they don't give you college preparatory classes. They don't prepare you to go to college. They give you easy work, just enough to keep you quiet, and keep you in there for 7 hours a day, and then they send you home. It's a daycare pretty much. When I was in those classes, I'm like, what? Y'all really sleeping on me? It's like 1 plus, sir, the work is not challenging. And they put you in there because now, today, if they get you labeled a certain way, then you don't count for that SOL test. So it's even more of a drive to get these kids labeled so they won't count for these tests, because we don't want to bring these schools' test scores down. Because the teachers are under tremendous pressure, the principal's under tremendous pressure, the superintendent's under tremendous pressure. So in order for us to kind of get these kids to decide, we're going to go ahead and just label them. And parents, we don't want that, right?
No.
We don't want that, right?
No.
All right, so it's already bad enough that our kids are being labeled black, sometimes the N-word. Sometimes we're being labeled, mislabeled, relabeled, just so many labels that we don't even know who we are. We don't have our identity. And when you got a kid in school who doesn't have his identity and you label these things, they internalize that. So they believe they're learning disabled. And they even have a term called emotionally disabled, which I don't understand what that means. So you tell a kid he's emotionally disabled, he's learning disabled, he can't learn, he's going to internalize that. He's not going to be interested in school anymore. He's going to sit in class and play and get in trouble. And also, I want to talk about the overrepresentation of African Americans in special education. In 2000, African American males represented 9% of the total student enrollment in the United States, but constituted for 20% of students labeled mentally retarded. Emotional disturbance, they accounted for 21% of that group. So, black males, they really targeting the black males. The black females are getting targeted, but the black males got the big red target on their back. So we got to protect our boys, stand up for our boys and our girls. Also, as a social worker, a lot of times when kids get labeled, check their vision, please. If you got a kid or you know of a kid that's going through this assessment process, check their vision. I couldn't see in school. I'm wearing glasses now, but I wouldn't wear my glasses in school because nobody calling me no nerd. So I couldn't see. I couldn't see the board. So of course, when you can't see the board, you're going to be playing because you're not focused on what's going on. And hearing, if your kid can't hear, your kids can't process the work. So check on the hearing and the vision. Also, I want to talk a little bit about gifted students. Do we got any gifted students out here? You got an old gift. You got one over there. We got a few gifted students in here. All of you all are gifted. But you remember when I said we overrepresented in special education? When it comes to gifted students, we're underrepresented. So we don't have enough representation in that category. It says, within race, black females are more likely to be identified as gifted than black males. Black males represent 9% of the public school population, but only represent 4% of honor students, compared to 20% of students in special education. So we make up 9% of the population in schools, only 4% of gifted students, but 20% of special ed. So you see there's an imbalance here. Has anyone in the room, because I've been on this thing lately about this whole perception of acting white, because there's been a lot of research and articles and stuff that came out about that philosophy. Has anybody ever experienced that growing up? Being told that they acted white, or because they got good grades, or their mom might have put a little bit of starch in their pants, and they might have tucked their shirt in, or they might have had a couple white friends. Anybody? Oh, y'all be acting black. I got one person in the back. We all just act black. I got a little kid over there. But there's this phenomenon, and kids get it's enough bullying going on as is in schools. But to bully a kid for getting good grades and to try to do the best they can, to get ahead and do well for themselves, I think that is it shouldn't be tolerated from the parents. It shouldn't be tolerated from the schools. It shouldn't be tolerated by the kids. Because the thing about it is that the research is saying that it's affecting those kids that are gifted. It's affecting them. They're more depressed. They have a lot of anxiety because they want to be cool. Being black, it could go back to Africa, but we have this peer loyalty. We loyal to our friends. We loyal to our block. We loyal to our little clique. We loyal to them. And sometimes when you're in a gifted program, you don't take classes with your friends. And your friends might tease you, because sometimes the kids doing the teasing is the ones that ain't getting their work done. So they're going to try to pull the gifted student down to make him feel how they feel. And it's really sad, because I talked to one friend, he said his nephew is in school in Richmond, and his nephew called him crying. He was crying because he is smart, but he can't be smart where he is because he doesn't want to get teased by his friends. I had another girl, she told me that her daughter, she had to pull her daughter out of school because her daughter's light-skinned. Her daughter gets really good grades in advanced placement classes, and she speaks good English. And she's getting teased so bad where her mother had to pull her out of school and put her to a different one. So I think that's something that we hear it, we gotta address it. We gotta just cut it off right there, just nip it in the bud. And lastly, I just want to talk about some solutions. I like to be solution focused, because if we don't have any solutions, we're not going to be able to fix any of the problems that we're going through. I talked about Natalie early on. You got to be an advocate for your kids. You have to be. Like I said, the school's under pressure. The school have benchmarks they're trying to reach, and your kid will get swept right under the rug because they got to keep that train going. So you have to be advocates for your kids and stand up for them. How many of y'all go to PTA meetings? Got 3. How many of y'all go to school board meetings? Okay, we got a few. Not enough, though. Not enough. Also, how many of you all actually read that little book your kids bring home at the beginning of the year, telling you the rules and what's going on in the school? Every word. Working in a prison, you learn that you have to read everything. Those guys in prison can tell you that it's this book with all the regulations. They can tell you that thing like the back of their hand. They know it. And when you know it, you can advocate for yourself. When you have a solution to a problem and you approach someone with it, that's half the battle solved right there. But if you complaining and you don't know what's in the book, then you can't say anything. So make sure y'all read those books and come home. Also, we need to educate our kids all year round. Amen. The research on that is actually pretty phenomenal, and it lets you know that when you think about in China and Japan, those kids go to school all year round. And then you look at how far they're advancing in math and science and leaving us in the dust. It lets you know that being in school all year round is something that's beneficial to us. A lot of times we hate summer school. Kids hate summer school. I'm not going to school in the summer. I'm going to go out, play football, hang out with my friends. But when you think about it, when they come back in the fall and they miss a whole 3 or 4 months of education, it's hard for them to rebound and catch up. That's right. So in place of that, we have to send our kids to enrichment activities. Take them to museums. How many of y'all take your kids to museums or grandkids to museums? Because we know when you're black and you're poor, your parents working. So grandparents, how many of y'all grandparents in here? Don't nobody want to raise their hand. So grandparents, sometimes y'all got to help with the kids. Take them out to the enrichment activities, the after-school activities. So we have to do those things just to keep us on an equal playing field with the other kids. Also, has anybody heard of STEM? The STEM programs? We got some people out here heard of that. Parents, if there's programs offered in your community regarding STEM, get your kids involved. Because I talked about how many people said they hate math. How many of y'all had problems with math in school? That's the narrative. I had a teacher when I used to do up with BAM. He said you love it. When the kids said they hate math, he said, no, you say I love it and I can't get enough of it. He made them say that. Each time they said they hated it. It's something that we struggle in, and I think a lot of it's because how it is taught. It's not taught in a way that I think our kids can grasp it. But our kids know math. Trust me. Leave some money laying out. Leave some money laying out, and see how the sports that the kids play. There's a lot of math and science involved with the sports. A lot of it. But a lot of times it's not put in a way where they can relate it to how they live. When I was in school, I'm going to relate my education to how I live, to my way of life. If you're not relating it, it's not going to interest the kids. But the STEM program, I have a friend that lives in D.C., and they have a STEM program. He's an engineer. And STEM it just means science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The real science, math-heavy courses. And he works with kids inside of D.C. inner city, and he meets with them and mentors them to let them know that, hey, engineering is an option. Being a computer, technician is an option. Giving them different career options because NFL and NBA and rapping are not the only options. So we have to introduce our kids to other options. And it's not their fault that they only see those as the only options because that's what's shown to them. That's what's given to them. So we got to make sure we introduce them to other options. Lastly, I'm going to talk about economics because economics is a huge critical part of why there's this big gap. I read an article that said poor kids who do everything right don't do better than rich kids who do everything wrong. And that just made me hurt. Like, you telling me it's kids out here that's doing everything right, not getting in trouble in school, getting a 4.0, going to a top school, everything right, and they still not doing better than a rich person kid who dropped out of school, might have caught a charge, and he's still doing better than them. And then really, and I think sometimes it's not fair, but the thing about America is that things aren't fair. So we got to persevere despite of, because we've been doing it, we're doing it right now. My ancestors did it. They didn't have cafeterias. I was in the school bus and it's cold with a coat on, trying to do math. So they didn't have those opportunities. So we got to persevere through some of the things that we stuck on. Also, they were saying that rich parents spend 3 or more hours per week talking to their children compared to poor parents and middle class parents. And they said that was a critical piece to really help their kids when they come into kindergarten and in their formative years, preparing them for school. And they also said that rich parents spend 3 times as much on enrichment. So they spend 3 times as much money on SAT preparation, summer camps for their kids, private schools. So that's what they're doing. And a lot of these things, let's not say we can't do it because we don't have the money, because we can find money for stuff and we want to find money for stuff. Talisha she has a co-worker who sends his kids to Ayla Country Day School. And he works at a restaurant. He don't make an enormous amount of money, but he understands that his kid's education, especially during those formative years are like kindergarten to like 6th, 7th grade. Those are formative years. And those are years where the child builds their foundation for education. And that's why Ayla Country Day School let their kids out at 8th grade. Because by the time you laid their foundation from kindergarten to 7th, when you send them into the school, they're already prepared academically. And they're already prepared for some of the challenges they're going to meet. And I'm going to close with this. I can't be mad at the rich people because I'm trying to get rich. I'm trying to be successful. We should all be trying to be successful. And we should not blame people, we should not shame people, and we should not criticize people who are successful or trying to be successful. Because that should be all of our goals. Because once we're successful and reach a certain point, we can reach back and pick somebody else up and bring them to that level. So we should not be ashamed of it. And it's something that we should strive for. But I am mad at them because a lot of that wealth that they generated was off the backs of your ancestors and my ancestors. So they kind of got the head start. You know? But we can catch up. We can do it, but we got to do it collectively. That's what we got. We got to take it back to old school. We got to take it back to that little small church, a little small church meeting up with the preachers fighting and all kinds of stuff, and get this community back in order. So, with that said, also at the end of the day, it's up to us as parents and as a community to put the youth in the best possible positions to achieve their goals. We are responsible as parents for the effort, not the outcome. It's up to you, the youth. Where the youth at? Throw it up real quick. There we go. It's up to you as a youth. It's up to you to reach for the moon and to set your own goals and to achieve them. And to harp back on Barbara Johns and some of the people that came before us who got us into these integrated schools, what would have happened if they didn't reach for the moon? What would have happened if Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington, Barack Obama, and some of the athletes didn't reach for the moon? Thank y'all.